Hello, we are back. Second time lucky, hopefully. My name is Andrew, and you are watching Run It Back, Snowball Esports' own Valorant podcast, where you guessed it, we talk about Valorant. I, the host, and joined by my wonderful two co-casters over here, other side, Avril and Racket. How are we going this week, lads?
Yeah, we're running the stream back. Sorry for the technical issues. Look, excited to be co-casting again. I'll just say the same thing I said just, like 2 minutes ago. I'm just excited to be co-casting, really.
Yeah, and I'm going to say the same thing backing up to that. We've got podcasting, we've got broadcasting, we've got casting spells, we've got everything on this podcast, How's your week been, Racket?
It's been good, mate. It's been quite fantastic. But, like all of our weeks, this is the highlight of the week, right? This is the highlight for everyone in the Twitch chats week. And this is going to be a special episode, of course, with another caster. Last week we had a caster. This is back-to-back casters, a lot of casting. So, yeah, get excited for that one, fellas.
And if we were lying that this person that we're getting on tonight is not one of the biggest casters in Oceanic Esports full stop, we'll be lying. She is an absolutely wonderful human being who got her career start in HOTS, transferred into League of Legends, and is now casting Valorant. She is one of the region's most talented broadcasters across all titles, has been to international events across the world. It is the one and only Vandie. How are you going?
I'm good, thank you. I'm a little bit blushing now because of the wonderful warm intro you gave. I'm just like, oh gosh, thank you.
I mean, I had you on the Snowball show. We had you on the Snowball show a few weeks back, and I felt like I didn't give you a good enough introduction, so I really had to polish it this time around. And I hope that one was better.
Oh, I really appreciated it. I mean, I liked both intros. I'm very much always shy when people talk of my successes. I never really talk about me. So I'm always just like really shy, but I loved it. It was very sweet. Thank you.
And before we get into the nitty gritty, I would love to put it to Twitch chat that if you have any questions for Vandie that you want to ask her throughout the podcast, hit us up in Twitch chat. I'll be checking it and I'll be sure to ask them midway through. But Vandie, we'll ask you the easiest question first. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, easy peasy. As you kind of mentioned, my background kind of stems in just gaming to start with, good old-fashioned gaming. Then esports kind of was, I guess, the next kind of step. I kind of just fell into that world. As you said, it was with Heroes of the Storm. Was a lot of where I got my commentating break. Otherwise, apart from that, like I was always just interested in playing games and I loved games. I even tried to get into like game development back when I was doing like university. So I fell into this world. And I got to say, it was funny because I was so resistant to esports at first. I was kind of like, why would I watch other people playing games when I could just play games? Like I never really got it, but then after going to like MOBAs with my friends and things like that and watching like League of Legends Worlds, that's where it all kind of started. So as I said, been in this industry now for about 4 years while also doing a bit of a normie job here and there or like the day job here and there, but wouldn't trade it for the world.
I noticed something actually while you were talking when you had the big close-up on you. Racket, could you have a look at your shirt and can we have a look at Vandie's chair? Because I think there's some astonishing similarities between the two.
I have to just go like this.
Yeah, yeah. Nice and cute. Wrong game for what we're talking about today.
You both, I mean, Avril and Ducky, you didn't get the memo. We're wearing pink tonight. I know it's not Wednesdays, but yeah, we're wearing pink
hang on,
I'm kind of contributing. Like
I should I gotta color correct my camera in a second. That'll help.
He's actually
got he's got LEDs in the back that he's just gonna like light off and it's just gonna make him like pink.
I was just gonna put a filter on the camera and then just make it look weird. You just have this pink filter on. That's the best I can do for now.
What about those Zoom backgrounds where it's just like you could just have like a full pink
Avril
just cut around your
is the
head?
master of backgrounds. Like I even know when you were doing one of the last tournaments, you actually had like the Puma shoe and like cherry blossoms, and Avril he's the master.
Yep, I look great, by the way, Avril, mate. Like that is a way to completely sell yourself. Now, joking. See, I try to do the same thing. My one really budget. I had like the box hanging with like shoes from like a store or whatever. But this guy just goes to the next level. Yeah, Vandie was with me when we were co-casting. Yeah.
I thought it was really clever, but I didn't realize that the crop that I had from your feed, it kind of ruined the spoiler. So it was only like half of it that was shown.
So you mentioned that you got your start in Heroes of the Storm. How did that all come about? Because obviously you mentioned that you weren't actually really interested in esports at the start of it. I guess it was your vibe around esports was kind of like the same thing about people with sports, of being like, why would you watch people play video games? You know?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I find it so funny. Like I said, it was like esports was chasing me and I was so resistant to it. And then when I finally succumbed and let myself go to it, I was like, oh my God, what have I been missing out on? But Heroes of the Storm, it kind of came about like League of Legends was always my main go-to MOBA after Dota. But the queue times were kind of getting to like, sorry, not the queue times, the games were going for like an hour. And I was just like, to play League for an hour and only have some random die, I was like, I need something else. So we kind of fell into Heroes of the Storm, which was a lot smaller, but the games were like really fast. There was a lot of brawling. And the best part was the ANZ community was very, very small in it. Because as I said, it wasn't like the MOBA of choice. We still had Dota 2. We still had League of Legends, which people would always prefer over HOTS. So it was like a really special community. And there was actually a guy named Disconcur, and he actually was like, I'm running this community event. Please let me know if anyone is interested. And I was like, I guess I'd be interested. So I kind of put my hand up for it and I was like, look, worst case scenario, I hate it, don't have to do it again. I actually fell in love with it. So that was really just grassroots ANZ sort of event, and it all kind of went from there.
You've spent some time international as well. You went to Katowice a couple of years ago for HOTS, and you didn't get the chance to go to HGC. But what's it like being able to that small hobby of yours from Disco, who is an absolutely great guy? I've had the chance to meet him. He's a wonderful, wonderful person.
So nice.
How has it been to be able to transform that into a massive career for you now?
I think it's just been unexpected would be the best way to describe it. I never expected myself to be able to, I guess, keep doing it. Like even now to this point, I still kind of can't believe it. Because as I said, I never really made it like my full time. I still always kind of kept my normal day job, as I know a lot of people in esports do, because the scene is definitely emerging. So I just never got to the point where maybe I could make it something that I do full time. And now that I am a stream manager of Legacy Esports, I kind of have transitioned it to my day job, which again, I just find bizarre. Like if you asked me when I was starting out, if I would have the opportunity to go to Katowice, if I would have the opportunity to travel like all the way interstate here and there, like no way, never would have thought that.
What was your day job?
Day job was in marketing. So I was a digital marketing specialist focusing a lot in search engine marketing. So, you know, those Google ads that you see? Yeah, I got to like work with agencies and brands and just put them up, I guess, like, and then monitor them. So it sounds really boring, but in itself, it was kind of like a game. It was quite fun.
Not my cup of tea. Like, I just stick to the words. I try to make Google like me, and that's about it. Like I don't worry about anything else there.
What's been like your favorite thing you've done in esports so far? I mean, this is like a Valorant podcast, but like it doesn't have to be Valorant. Like just in general, over the course of everything you've done in esports, what's been some of the highlights?
Oh, definitely the travel, but more so the people and players. Like there's nothing more satisfying than I suppose like a gaming community, and say you've just finished up a cast or something like that and people reach out and they're like, I really enjoyed this because of you. Like you helped make this broadcast very enjoyable. That to me is really, really wholesome. And that to me, again, is really special. Normally I find it more on the smaller events, like say when I'm doing like community casting or covering games or scrims for like friends, like they just really love it and they're just so appreciative of it. And I'm just like, I love this. Like, thank you. Those are definitely the highlights. And just the people, as I said, because Oceanic and Australia and New Zealand, like we're so small, like our community is like dwarfed by like the giants, you know, Korea, NA, EU, that again, we're also connected in so many different games. Like it's funny that our paths are different, but then here we find ourselves all on Valorant, right? Whereas it was like Overwatch or PUBG or Fortnite or all these other different titles.
Yeah, like it's interesting in OS that like it's sort of seen as like a blessing in disguise, and that fact is like our community has always been small, which means that we haven't really broken into the top echelons of like games. When you look at it, we haven't really had a top tier team outside of a select few in like CS:GO or Rocket League, and even like top tier players in some other titles. But it's like it's got a really nice homely feeling when you're playing in Australia, and like when LANs were a thing where we could go outside and see people and interact face to face without masks, you know. It was very nice and welcoming in the OC esports community because there was like that for me when I started out. I'm not sure if it was like that for you, Avril or Racket, but like when I started out in journalism, the thing that drew me to it and the thing that keeps me going to this day, at least in Oceania, is the fact that I feel like I owe so much to this community because it's just such a wonderful group of people. Just nodding your head there,
dude,
Racket.
I wanted to say something quickly. Nah, not really. But there was like, no, but really it is though. Like at the end of the day, it was like I couldn't even be edgy about it. It's like it is just the truth at the end of the day. It's like there's just something really cool about like even after doing international stuff and going to different places and doing other things, being a part of the home community as it were is always a good feeling.
Yeah,
I mean, you can be edgy about it. You've got signed on your team. Sorry, I just have to get my one Dale Tang flame in an episode, and then we're good to go. Racket.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't be that, but like the advantage of being like in the OCE scene, I suppose, is like everything seems like within reach of talking to someone, right? Because it is smaller. Like that is one of the advantages you do have of like being a smaller scene. Like, because even when I believe like earlier on in my Overwatch days, like when the very first time I got to cast like a LAN sort of, which was at Zenland, which was when I first met Vandie, I was like, oh my gosh, like this caster from HOTS, like this really big caster, like how is this even possible? But like because the scene's so small, like it's possible that someone like inexperienced can like be with someone like that for an event or whatever. So it was cool to see.
What has it like been swapping from like HOTS and League, which is your typical hotbed of games, to Valorant?
It wasn't super weird because I've been doing battle royales here and there, but Valorant has been my first like official like FPS title. And what makes it even funnier is that like it's a tactical FPS, right? So it's not just your traditional like Call of Duty run and gunner sort of style. So it wasn't that difficult because I've had that shoot. Like I love playing shooters myself, so it kind of makes that easier. But I guess it was more just having to really familiarize yourself with the characters, the play styles, the players, things like that in a short amount of time. But it really helps in that Valorant really piqued my interest early so I could get involved early. Like I even couldn't wait to the point where I was like, I need to get on this beta, even though now I'm going to have to play with 300 ping. Like I just couldn't wait. I really wanted to check it out. And so it helps, especially when you can adopt it earlier.
Did you not do, you did Overwatch, didn't you? Wasn't that an FPS
Yes.
you did? Or?
Yeah, I did Overwatch. I didn't do it for very long. It was way too fast in gameplay for me, personally, for my commentating style. But I did it for a little bit, yeah, and that's where I met Racket at Zenland Lounge or something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a
the
while
good
ago.
old Zen lands
Gaming
of
Lounge.
days gone by.
Yeah, literally.
Makes you feel old.
I would have thought like doing HOTS would have been good prep for, I guess even doing Overwatch or anything, because I find MOBAs, in some cases, like, MOBAs have a decent amount of downtime, but I think HOTS as a MOBA is actually pretty fast-paced. Like, it is constant action always happening, objectives are always appearing, and teams are always fighting all the time, so I would have thought a game like HOTS would have been, fairly fast-paced, and a lot of things happening at the same time. But no, that's interesting, like what's been kind of the different quirks of all the different kind of games and genres you've kind of done, and how have you needed to progress as a caster throughout your career to handle yourself across all the different titles and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely helped. Like I would say it's most definitely has helped. But the thing that I guess I like to do as a caster is that I don't really cast titles that don't interest me. I feel like it just makes me a weaker caster overall. Like if I cannot pick up the game and constantly play it, how are you supposed to cast it? And I know lots of casters have, casted games that maybe they're not as familiar with. I think that's very healthy for the scene, especially if you want experience. But for me, personally, it doesn't make sense for me to go after a game that I don't play very much. And that's also kind of what happened with Overwatch. It was competing with HOTS at these kind of on the side. So I kind of had to just like pick and choose because they introduced like the HGC for Australia, and that's when we could do like weekly casts almost. So I was like, I kind of had to like pick and choose there. But apart from like in my downtime, it's always just been availability and what's been the game that I've been playing consistently. Because that's how you can keep up to date with the knowledge. Otherwise, like I said, I feel like you lag behind or you just don't really have the background to make yourself shine as a caster, and you're not really doing the broadcast justice, it feels like.
To add on to that as well. Oh, sorry, Ducky.
No, you go.
Sort of adding on to Avril's question there as well. Is there anything technically technical that you have to do as a caster to like adapt from going for like a MOBA to an FPS as well? Because like, I mean, you've done a variety of different titles, right? You've done battle royales, you've done Overwatch, you've done MOBAs, 2 different MOBAs. Like, it is impressive how like you can go through a variety of different styles, and not only through those titles as well, but different commentator styles through being like a color and a play-by-play, right? So how difficult is it to like adjust through all those variables? I mean, like there are not many like casters overall that can transition through different games and different roles at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's really important what you highlighted, the different roles. So for me, when I was covering the majority of my titles, I always stuck to analyst and color commentary until League of Legends. So when Riot actually approached me and were like, we need a caster, we think it'd be great. We know that HOTS now has discontinued its competitive scene. Do you want to give it a crack? They're like, there is one catch though. We are inundated with color casters. We need a play-by-play. And I was like, that's really interesting because not only have I not played the game for 3 years, but I'm also doing a whole different role. So that was probably the biggest casting challenge to date I've ever had. And then League is so different from HOTS because, as Avril already mentioned, it's so much more faster paced in HOTS. So then to go to League of Legends where there's so much downtime, and I'm just like, this is so strange. League was probably the hardest game I had to come back and cast because shooters and everything, battle royales, like I said, they all carry similar elements, but League of Legends, to have like that double whammy, it was definitely very challenging. And I guess in terms of what I did, it was just practice, play. I had to play League of Legends and live and breathe it essentially to get myself ready for that first OPL cast. I was just like, this is so stressful.
Does a game like feel different like when you're casting it versus when you're like actually playing it? And also like, I guess from a third tangent from there is like, does it feel different to play when you have to learn it like rapid fire for a cast? Like, does that like sap some of the enjoyment out of the game for you? And you mentioned that you only like in casting games that you enjoy playing. So like, does that weigh in as a factor a little bit? And if you like really enjoy a game, but you have to cast it under stress, does that actually like affect how you play it as well?
It wasn't so much the playing side that felt stressful. Playing for me was always quite normal because, again, I guess I've always enjoyed games. The casting side was really what stressed me out because I guess I have that perfectionist nature in myself where I'm very critical of myself. I feel as though everyone can praise me and think I did a good job, but if I feel like I failed myself, like those words feel empty to me. It's quite a strange thing. I'm pretty sure like other casters also, maybe either Avril or Rakic, maybe you feel the same sometimes where you can be very critical amongst yourself. But so it was more just that I really wanted to bring my A game. And I was like, okay, but if I don't know like half of these champions, like I really want to make sure. I was literally just like studying. I was like, Evelyn, rework. And I had like this whole notebook just full of notes that I was just like trying to like drill it into my head as fast as possible. But the playing was actually more of like a stress reliever, it felt like actually.
I find getting into games with a big history to be quite intimidating. So, like, if you're trying to get into League of Legends, where League of Legends has already had years and years and years of competitive history, OPL's existed for a very long time. All the other leagues have existed for a very long time as well. Like, that to me is almost the more intimidating part of it. Like, learning the game and playing the game is one thing, but the more esports side of it, I feel like on some level you have to know the histories, you have to understand who the players are, who the teams are, where they've come from, like who have had the titles and where the rivalry's at, and all the different interactions there. And that's the part that for a broadcaster, for an esport, I find to be a lot to take in if you're trying to jump into a scene that's already fairly developed.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because I felt the exact same way. And I think that's why people do kind of jump from like new title to new title. It's much easier to be a part of a new scene and kind of just like pull knowledge bits and pieces as opposed to like, as Avril said, like CS and League of Legends, even StarCraft, where there's just casters that have been around since the start. And you're like, I have to compete with this guy? Like what? Or this gal? Like it's very, very daunting. But I think something that I learned along the way that maybe can help people is that you do not need to be that caster. No one is expecting you to have 20 years of knowledge, right? Like no one's expecting to have 5 years of knowledge. As long as you're authentic to yourself, everyone knows that there's that person on the broadcast that can fulfill that. You can ask them those history questions. That for me was something that I had to learn personally because I was trying to learn all that knowledge. Like I did that for HOTS. To the point where they were like, you kind of almost seem like you're trying to take on this other caster personality. We brought you on the broadcast to be you. Like, why are you trying to be like the history buff all of a sudden? I'm like, it's like what Avril said though. I was just feeling so overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't want to look like the dumb caster that doesn't know anything.
Does that like helped you in the transition to Valorant then when it's like a totally new game, total new ecosystem that it's like you don't have to worry about all the histories, you just have to worry about the 12 agents in the game and what they do?
Well, kind of to a point, because a lot of the players, because our player base is so small, a lot of these players have been around. And that's where, again, I'm relying on, like, say, casters that I'm paired up to, say, with Avril, where you've just got such a wealth of knowledge, especially anyone that's touched the Overwatch scene. Same for Racket, where you can just be like, bam, bam, I recognize these names, which is really good to see. So it's cool that I'm learning as I go from my co-casters. But again, now that I don't have that fear that I used to once have of being like, I need to know it all. You do not. You really don't. As long as you can really set your caster up. No one wants two of the same caster, right? Like if both of you are the history buff, that's a boring broadcast. And it was just like through trial and error that I finally found out that, yeah, I don't have to know it all. Even though I still sometimes feel like I should, I just feel like now that I've kind of accepted it, it's okay. Play to your strengths.
Yeah. How's it been then, like, working alongside? Does it feel different working alongside, like, FPS-based casters, which you've probably encountered a lot more in Valorant than, like, a MOBA style of caster versus, like, what you were encountering in League and in HOTS, because they're ostensibly different styles of games, so the casting styles would also be ostensibly different.
I don't think as much, because HOTS was kind of good towards the tail end of when I was getting involved with HOTS. It was kind of, they were after casters who could do a little bit of both play-by-play and analysts, and made a very healthy cast if you could pick up where the play-by-play left off, even if it be a sentence or two, or even if the play-by-play could kind of open up a little can of discussion for the analyst and then pass it over. So HOTS taught us to be hybrids, and I really like that. League of Legends, I think it's more traditional in the role that they want, like PvP to mostly be PvP, analyst to mostly be analyst, but then you kind of need to have that blend on those off moments anyway. So I think it's not so much the role that matters or the type of game, it's your chemistry with your co-caster. That's what it feels like for me in Valorant.
Speaking of chemistry, and Ducky, you're saying working with FPS casters now. You've actually worked with Vandie, quite a few casters in Valorant already. Between both Racket and I, and on Rise of Valor, you've got a different person you're working with all the time as well.
Literally.
So what's the juggling act been like for you there with working with like just what must be like 5 or 6 different casters by now between Rise of Valor and OVO?
It's kind of weird. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess it's because I haven't really found like my casting pairing. In HOTS, it was very easy. It was like me and Skimmy. That was it. Like we were just synergy. We often joke that we were like literally brother and sister that got separated at birth or something, because we did like we're so close even in real life, even though we're not doing casting on the same games anymore. Like Skimmy now covers OPL. But our time on HOTS together, like that was kind of the best chemistry I suppose I've ever had. And it was weird because we just immediately clicked. I think for me, it's more just like I like to try and just chat to my co-caster, especially even before broadcast. So say for Guz, who I was working with for Rise of Valor, I never had the chance to cast with him before. And so just like chat with him beforehand, kind of figure out what he was into, ask him some dumb questions like, like if you were trapped on a deserted island, what would you do? And he's just like, what does this have to do with it? It's just like for me to get to know him.
That is such a Guz response.
yeah, literally. I love him. Like, I gotta say, like, him and I probably get on quite well. Now that I've but I was a bit scared of him at first. I was like, I don't know what you're gonna be like. I hope you don't mind me, essentially. I think of course, you can't rush it though, Avril. Like, I think the best thing is just to give it some time. And you're both professionals at the end of the day. Using those old little casting cues that I'm sure we all know, like making sure you're using their name, like after you've done a point, okay, that was a great play, Avril. Or, hey, Racket, what did you feel about that? Just cueing your caster in to let them know that you're done, because you can't quite like let it drop and then they don't know if you're going to make another point. Because Avril, I know when we casted, I kept accidentally picking up when you wanted to give dead air. And it took me, I think, second cast that we did it to realize that was your style. But again, we didn't have it from the get-go. We had to work towards it.
I'm different. I don't know. Like that might have just been a me thing, honestly. Like I don't know now. Since you've been casting with other people, I don't know this thing. I just everyone's got kind of like a quirk about it. Like everyone's got a different style, which is the great part. And everyone kind of develops differently. And I kind of wanted to get your opinion. Whenever I talk to other casters as well, it's like about their individual journeys of what they learned to get to where they were. So, like in your experience throughout the time that you've been casting and in esports, like what have been some of the takeaways and some of the important lessons you've learned, or some of the really good feedback that you've ever received, or some of the hurdles, some of the really big hurdles that you had to get past, and how you kind of did that?
I kind of discussed some of the hurdles and takeaways. So things like you don't need to know it all, especially in an established esport. You don't have to, again, you don't have to clone the other casters. You just need to really focus on why, say, you were chosen for a broadcast or an event or something like that. And I think, again, just always ask, like, if you felt like a cast didn't go well, chat to it with your co-caster. Chances are they can always help you out, give you some pointers, feedback. I know everyone always wants to pat each other on the back, like after a cast, but I think if you delve into it a little bit more and just be like, was I doing this too much? Was the pacing okay? There's always like insights to be gained. I think casters are the best to kind of get that feedback from, because you're in the same scene. You're both working as a pair. You both want the broadcast to be as great as it can be. I think relying on things like Reddit and public forums and things like that is a terrible idea. I learned very, very early to just like try and block that out. Especially, I kind of gave myself a rule. Like when I first started casting, I was so excited. Like I literally had like the broadcast in another screen. And I would like read comments and stuff. But then say if you read the wrong comment where someone's like, this chick is so annoying. Like I hate her voice. And of course, everyone has a preference, but you read those, right? And then it kind of messes with you for the rest of the broadcast. So I make it a rule now to only watch VODs. And even if I have to, sometimes it feels like a chore where I have to actually listen to it with volume on because I don't want to hear myself. I'm just like, I don't want to hear my voice back. But VOD review is so important. So forcing myself to do those as well is something that has definitely helped skill up as a caster.
Yeah, people got to review each other and they got to give feedback to each other. Like people I cast with never get feedback from me because I'm scary. I'm joking. But it's like the way you have to really get good. So people have to, if especially with people who want to work with each other at least somewhat regularly or long term, they got to do a lot of feedback with each other. Definitely people that I've worked with at least semi long term ended up having to do some at least really good feedback cycles where, sometimes people got to be really honest with each other. And
all right, spill the beans, man. How many times have you been honest with Pixie?
I've been trying to.
Yeah.
Dodge that question.
It's just like, sometimes it's like, I hold my tongue. And people are like, oh, like, so what can we improve? Like, oh, let me open that notebook about what we can improve on in that cast. No.
But people need that.
But that's the thing. It's like, because he's been like my longest casting partner, I've had the most back and forth with him. And I've had the most heated back and forth with him because it's like, that's what's required to get to a certain level. Sometimes you got to break it all down. Like, I don't know, like not to sound dramatic about it, but especially when you're maybe not too sure what's going on and you're like kind of stressed out about breaking to a certain level or something like that. It just requires a certain level of breakdown where you just have to rip apart the whole thing and build it from the start again and with stronger foundations. And a lot of that comes back to feedback. And look, sometimes it can be conflicting because maybe there's a bit of a clash somewhere or, people have different ideas. And I don't know, it's kind of like at that point, it's kind of like a professional relationship. Feels like being in like a casting marriage. It's just like there's a bit of bickering, and you have to try and sort it out so you can move on.
I kind of just got to agree. With the rapport comes again, that transparency. I don't think like I'd be comfortable giving like my full thoughts away after like a first cast, but I would definitely, if there's like blatant things that I could notice, it's also how you frame it. And I think casters need to be aware. Especially, I know, like when you're younger in the scene, like no one wants to be told what they're doing wrong, right? It's very hard to just make sure that you're taking it as a constructive. Like this will help you. Like I'm only saying it because I want you to improve. As long as you can be mindful of that, but it's a tough pill to swallow, and definitely maturity has helped with that one for sure. Like getting older definitely has helped with that one.
I think people need sometimes though, like to really get good, you kind of need someone to just be like pretty blatant with you and just tell it to you straight. Because I feel like. There are definitely moments in my career where I'm like, dude, I wish I just received a piece of feedback a little bit earlier, a little bit more stern, and a little bit more straightforward without any sugarcoating, because it was just, I would have gone past several hurdles much quicker if someone just told me something straight to my face, like no filter, just like, dude, that sucked, dude, you gotta change that, or like, this is really rubbish, or like just something that wasn't, maybe that's just like my personality, my style, but I would prefer to have my feedback given to me, you know, black coffee style, just no sugar, no milk, just chuck it at my face, you know.
It's weird that you say that, Avril, because that's been the best feedback that I've received from another caster. I don't know if you know of Kaldor, who covered a lot of Warcraft 3. He's like the Blizzard god, essentially. He's been around those titles forever, but he gave me the best feedback, and it was because it was black coffee styles. Yeah, he's like, you really want my feedback? And he's like, don't take it personally, but he's like, I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to be critical. And I was like, yes, that's why I'm asking you, please. And it was the best feedback I ever got. So big shout out to Kaldor if he ever watches this.
All right.
And now, just like last time, Ducky, you're muted, and because you're muted, I'm gonna take this chance. Now, just like last time, I asked this: would you mind sharing? Because just out of curiosity, just it's a good like lesson for people. Like, is there any of that you'd want to share in terms of like what some of that really good feedback kind of sounds like?
I actually have a notebook with it. I wish I had. I wish I had the foresight to bring it. I don't know if it's this notebook. Like, I've got my casting notebooks everywhere, but I don't know. I wrote it down. No, it's not this one. This was one that Xenox actually stole from me and wrote PUBG notes in. But it was just like along the lines of, again, like, because I was like, you know, I was a little bit bummed out that, say, I hadn't been chosen to go to like BlizzCon, which is fine. They could only really have one rep, but I was like, I want to be able to like be good enough where they're actually considering me, because they didn't even consider me for it, right? And then so he was just like, when I got the opportunity to cast with you at Western Clash, he was like, you just seemed a little bit unfocused. Like, it seemed as though you were just like very quiet, second guessing yourself, like what was wrong? And then I was like, I don't know, I was just really nervous. Like, I was just really getting like imposter syndrome. And he's like, remember, you got chosen for a reason. So it's kind of been the things that I've already been alluding to. He's like, you got chosen for a reason, play to your strengths. You're an analyst that likes to analyze like team compositions and things like that. He's like, why are you trying to be someone, you know, why are you trying to be the history gal? And I was like, oh. Didn't really realize what I was doing wrong. Then also things like, he was like, don't forget your energy and things like that. He's like, when you're opening a cast, he's like, remember, with a live audience, you can really play to the audience and stuff like that. Don't just make it the same boring, generic stuff you've been doing at your home cast. He's like, really think about the location, the audience, and the energy. He's like, for grand finals, you don't want to go like 1,000% at the beginning, but he's like, we want to build it up as we go. And it was just like, again, just hearing someone say these things that seem so simple, but to hear someone say them to you, like, really helped. There was a bunch of other stuff, but like I said, unless I bring that notebook out, won't be able to remember it because it was quite a few years ago. But I definitely, again, I got the best feedback that I ever could because it wasn't sugar-coated.
Am I not muted now? Can you hear me now, Kevin?
Yes.
Am I good?
Specific to me, or
Crack
I specifically
the major
can
run it back. Can we hear it? Let's pivot back to what Run It Back is all about, which is Oceanic Valorant. So you've had the chance to cast OVO, you've had the chance to cast Rise of Valorant, there's still more casts coming from that way. You've had the chance to watch a lot of teams. Now, I took this question from chat earlier from Crocus DW, who has literally just tagged me again. Croc, I'm walking. He wanted to know about what team do you think is the strongest, and who do you think is overrated or underrated in the scene right now? And I think if you say that Direwolves are overrated, Avril might cut, so just be careful of what you say.
I mean, Direwolves, the upset, Avril, don't know what went on there. No. It's kind of weird with OVO because, of course, the invitation style means that the top teams have already just got their invite. We're waiting to see them play into play-ins. We only did the open qualifiers where we saw a couple of teams coming through. I mean, like old team Launch, ExoClan, they still look very, very good. We have things like, obviously, Direwolves, who we're all keeping good tabs on as well. But some of the teams that have really impressed me have been probably the lesser-known ones. So things like Magic 5, who I saw, really impressed me. Then there was, what was their name? It was something silly. Chostars, who Direwolves, of course, they took you guys out. But then they came back, like, in a later week. They were quite interesting to watch. There was... Jeez, I wish we didn't go on
McTeam,
break.
is that a fun name?
McTeam,
Like
yes.
that?
I kept doubting them. I kept doubting poor McTeam. And here McChickenleg was just like, bruh, what is your problem? Here, we're going to show you how we get our ticket through. There was Tilted as well. So I don't know, all these teams that I guess we only started seeing in Rise of Valor have really interested me for one reason or another. I don't know if I can kind of comment much on whether they feel underpowered or overpowered because, again, they haven't gone up against the cream of the crop. That's kind of the way the competition has worked. So last chance qualifiers will be kind of more interesting because at least then we get to see teams fight for that spot, and then play-ins is where everyone's really going to start to get those power rankings ready because we've been on break now because of the COVID restrictions. I think that will also play a bit of a part in it in terms of what sort of play styles teams have been playing with, who's been practicing, who's just been going on their own vacation. But yeah, I don't know. There's quite a few teams, but for me personally, like something about Magic 5 really drew my interest in because they were like literally Zing, the first name that I popped out, and I don't know, it was just the way they played. Just felt really good to me when I saw it, and also McTeam, who Avril brought up, they were very interesting.
Yeah, I was really thinking, like, wonderful point by Crashmate in chat is pants down. Like, they're a really, really strong squad. Obviously, they're looking for a fifth right now because Twiz is off to work at his new job. But, like, when it was, like, Cover and Super Trooper and all those guys, like, they were really, really strong. And I think if they can find the right fifth to slot into that, I really think that we can see them potentially slot into the Final Four.
Oh, I kind of considered Pants Down to be, top. Like, I didn't expect them to be like a mid-tier team. But yeah, actually a good point that you made with their roster needing shuffling. So I'm not really sure. That team still just feels really strong. They're a young group as well. So good things. But sorry, yes, I didn't mention them because I kind of really consider them to be like on the invite levels. It's kind of like if we saw them play in OVO, we've got a kind of good idea of where they're at. It's more the teams that we didn't see. The teams that we didn't see playing in OVO that we're curious to see once they're up against the stacked rosters, how they're going to go.
Yeah, for reference as well, Magic 5, they've been participating in the thing that I cast, the Summoner Society, every week, and they've won like every one that they've entered for reference as well. So like, especially like for reference, like the tournaments that Avril casted when Valorant first came out, I remember Pants Down were like the team that was pretty much entering a lot of them, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember you making Pants Down jokes. That's what really clicked with my head.
That's just because I'm friends with people on that team. It's just like it's easy for me to make jokes about them.
The name is just
but also
so
they
inviting
did
for it as well.
into
Let's be real.
Well.
Oh no, they've been caught with their pants down. Oh, yes. It's a disaster.
Their logo as well is great. It's literally just South Park pants down. I'm just like, oh yeah.
Can we also just appreciate their logo as well with like the medals when they're holding it? And, like they've just dropped their DAX and you can just see the medal hanging, and it's just like it's safe for work. I know what I'm describing is definitely borderline not safe for work, but like it's safe for work. Just got to trust me on that one.
I don't want to
trust you,
Google
Ducky. Don't worry, mate.
I trust you, but I'm still not going to go look at it anytime soon.
So who do you think the weakest competition is Direwolves are going to squash then, Avril? Is it just everyone, full stop?
Can you say that again? What is the question?
Who are you going to just squash everyone on Direwolves then? Or like, do you think some teams stand a chance?
Every week, mate. Daily. I do that all the time.
I'm curious, what have you been doing with the boys during the break? Is it just scrimming as usual, or any competitions, small ones here and there, community cups, or keeping the secret strats? Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of scrimming when teams don't cancel on us. So there's a lot of scrimming, and not a lot else. So there was the a little bit of the show matches that was on the week before. That was a bit of fun. And honestly, it's I wish there were more tournaments. I think a lot of people, a lot of teams would agree, but there's just feels like outside of the Ignition Series tournaments, and this is like painfully obvious with the delays as well. Now that there has been a bit of a delay in continuing the next round of Rise of Valor, it's just like everyone's just kind of like, hang on, like what's there to play in right now? Like it just feels like a bit of a gap, and I just kind of wish there was more involvement from third party. Even though like that's a bit of an ask, like it's not as forehead simple as like someone just do it, but it does make me think like, damn, I really wish there were some more tournaments to play in.
I mean, Conk Moto's coming. Like I know there's a few teams happening in that.
What is happening?
The good old Konkmoto cast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're arranging one. LPL should be kicking off as well. LPL's Valorant series. But I agree, like we've just hit this weird point where there's just a drought, it feels like.
I can't wait to. I'm playing an LPL myself, and I personally can't wait to place an amateur because we're just that bad. To be honest, it's just going to be great. I'm going to drop like 5-20. Actually, even better, I'm just going to go a good old 4-20 every game, and just that's how life rolls. But you know what? I might see your boy inside there as well, Kevin. So it's all good.
Where in the tournament?
Not Direwolves, just signed. All right, just
signed.
Just signed.
Don't you mean Singed Lameo?
Who was that again?
Mr. Red.
Wasn't
That's
that
Mr.
one
Red.
of the Mind Freak boys?
Yeah,
it's Mr.
but I
Red.
was just like, huh? Just the names and
What about Fireball? Is Fireball competing?
Oh, I have to talk to the big bosses about that one, but I'm sure that if Fireball competing, they've already won. So it's just a race for second at that point.
I kept looking for poor Fireball to make it to round 3 because that's when, of course, the broadcaster matches on Rise of Palestine. I was like, oh.
Yeah, they didn't make it to round 3 because they just like breezed through everyone. Like they finished all their matches before you could even bother casting them, Vandie. That's why you didn't see them.
Yeah,
by the way,
they just won the tournament by the time they came on broadcast.
This is just a little bit of an aside, but while we're talking about tournaments, I am a really big fan of moving past best of ones, and I'm not just saying that because Direwolves lose a lot of best of ones, but best of ones in general. Like I get it. I part of me is like, look, if you're doing an open qualifiers, if you're doing it like a lot of teams, logistically, best of ones are the best. You're just not going to have enough time to play anything other than best of ones if there is just a lot of teams. But now that I've seen, the more official games, the more tournaments that I see, especially outside of Australia, where best of 3 formats are a thing, and obviously you have to get to a certain stage of competition where it's all relatively good teams and it's like the top 16 or something like that. But best of 3 is like a really good format for Valorant, and just in general for like most games. I feel like best of ones, you just feel like, oh man, it's so, it can just be so. I don't want to use the word random. It's not quite random, but it doesn't feel quite like when you won. It doesn't feel like that's it. It feels like there's a little bit more that could have been there. Like the amount of times you see in a best of 3 that it can actually go to 3 maps, and the sort of swings that you see even between different maps, where like I've seen teams completely stomp one map and then get stomped the next map and then go to the third map. It's just like, wow, there's actually a lot here in terms of the depth of what a wider format than a best of 1 can actually give. So I'm excited to get to a stage where, for Australian tournaments, we can start getting into more best of 3, so we can start getting that.
I think we did the one thing right with open qualifiers a lot very early. Like that was my number one pet peeve with all the NA and EU and most of the international competitions is like from day one, all the major ones were invite only. So we didn't get to see many like rising star stories, I guess, like we've seen from Bonk recently in EU, or we didn't see the Homeless now Dignitas roster in NA, or we saw less of them, I guess is what I'm trying to get out here. I think that was the really strong point, is that we got that part right, and now we just need to kind of get on the BO3 bandwagon kind of thing, I think.
Well, like even that is like, it's rough because even the open qualifiers, a lot of those open qualifiers is like, it could be just like best of 1 single elim. So you could be a team like, let's say Bonk, best of 1 single elim. Good luck.
And if you get get eliminated.
I mean, anything can happen. I feel like in that, then it starts to feel like, I hate to say it's random, but you start to feel like there's maybe a little bit of RNG in there. Like it feels like if you have one bad game, you're kind of done. Or if you run into one really good team, it sucks because one of those 2 really good teams is going to have to get knocked out no matter what. Like could be you, could be the other team, but in a case where like both of those teams should really make it, and you have to knock each other out really early on, it's like one team just has to cop it, and that always feels bad. So I don't really know, like, because there's always a logistical problem with it. Like you can't exactly have like an open qualifier best of 3 either, or maybe you could. I don't know. Like the time factor is certainly an issue. So yeah, like even tournaments that do have open qualifiers, to actually qualify through the open qualifier is a really rough road.
I think it was interesting that Rise of Valor tried kind of almost like the Battle Royale system where they did points over like an aggregated period. That's kind of a way of combating if you're using the best of one system. If the further you go, of course, you manage to get points. I don't know if it's, again, the most ideal format. Like best of 3 feels the same, but it's kind of cool that Rise of Valor tried something different with their tournament structure instead of just same old, same old. And then it just kind of opens it up. But I think as we kind of expand, and then of course we get like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 kind of tournaments. So like tier 3 being maybe like grassroots, and then tier 1 being like maybe those big international events or those finals where we can send a rep over. It kind of course, the structure needs to change accordingly. But at the minimum, I think even something as simple as just having overtime rules, if it has to be a best of 1. A lot of the time I know for Rise of Valor that they didn't quite have that. And again, it was for time constraints and time purposes as well, because they just needed the matches to end. So that they could schedule them in. But this is why I'm not the tournament organizer. This is why I'm just the talent.
Well, Vandie, thank you so much for coming on to run it back tonight. Really, really appreciate you taking some time out of your very busy schedule. Where can we find you? Where can everyone watch you stream or commentate in the near future?
Yeah, easy. So as Ducky kind of hinted to, I do stream. So I'm on Twitch. It's twitch.tv with Vandie and an underscore. And then also on Twitter, I have Vandie with an underscore. And then I use Instagram with just Vandie. Basically, it's either going to be Vandie or Vandie with an underscore. And if it looks like it's got like 10 people and there's no profile picture on it, it's not me, unfortunately. I've tried to get that count. It's just like some bot that's camping my name. But yeah, I guess with Rise of Valor coming back, I think they're going to be announcing more details on how it's going to go, because I think September 19th was the day they were aiming towards. That's probably going to be the next cast that I get to get involved with. But otherwise, yeah, it's just online on all the usual channels with my handle.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Vandie. Wish you the best of luck with all the rest of Rise of Valor, and hopefully we get to chat soon.
Absolutely. Hope so. Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Thanks, Avril. Thanks, Racket. Thanks, Ducky. See you all. And thanks, Josh, as well in the background.
It's becoming a little bit of a thing, always thanking the producer in the background. That's how much he's in our ear, guys. You can't hear him, but we should actually probably think about bringing him on for a guest one time, because I think he talks more than us at times. Yeah.
He can be a guest and produce at the same time.
Pardon?
He can just produce and be a guest at the same time. Just do it all. And then as he's being a guest, we're like, let me just change that scene.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He just got all he's going to have for the entire show is the one panel on himself.
Yep.
And we can't stop him from doing that.
Nope.
So maybe that is a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't have suggested that. That's my bad. I'm going to hold that up. We've got some rapid fire Valorant news that we have to get through. And there have been some pretty big doozies this week, because patch 1.07 dropped this week and was arguably the biggest patch in the game's history, because holy shit, Sage is dead. And I'm not sure if you're going to be a crying emoji about that, or if you're going to be absolutely crabbing around the room, blaring out Crab Brave. Because I'm definitely in the latter group that Sage is gone. Do we think Sage is dead and out of the competitive meta for now?
Oh, dude, they finally killed Mercy, and I cannot be happier. Racket, what do you think?
You've been calling for it for weeks, bro.
He has. I mean, we all know that Avril hates Sage. I mean, to be honest,
I hate Mercy.
Browsing through Twitter, right? Like the common theme is like people are like, oh yeah, Sage was getting a decreased play rate. Why are Riot touching her? For me, people are missing the point. Riot are putting their foot on the ground and they're saying, right, this for Valorant is unhealthy. So we're going to, even though Sage technically isn't the best agent, like considered by a lot of people towards the later phase of the competitive scene, she still had like the widest pick range by far. Like she still had the what was it, like high 70% or something, which is absolutely ridiculous. And she has a very, very different kit to everyone else in the game. So they're just putting her in line with the rest of the agents because she's so ridiculously different, and her playstyle is unhealthy for what Valorant inherently is, with the resurrection and heal abilities. Avril, I know you're cranky, mate. I'm passing the mic to you.
No, dude, you said it all. I gave you my notes beforehand. Like, yes. Racket, here are my thoughts on Sage, read them out, and you did it. So we're good. We're good.
The interesting thing that we like when we're talking about play rates, though, is like the one issue, and I'm not being a Sage apologist here. I think the nerfs could arguably go even further, because honestly, just fuck that character. But I think when you bring play rates into the question, you really have to start looking at agents like Cypher as well, especially in a professional setting where Cypher now has like a 95% pick rate or something. Like, what changes could be done in that regard? Obviously, in patch 1.07, the stage changes weren't the only thing. Killjoy got a DPS nerf to a nanoswarm. Viper got a buff to a decay that no longer tags allies. And Breach got an extra flash, which makes them a lot more viable now, which is great, I think, because I mean, I think Breach is a really, really versatile character, and I think now that teams are actually going to be like forced into picking him up, and now I think that's going to mean that people are going to start experimenting with it more, and that's really exciting for me. Also forgot to mention that Breach also got the concussion buff where they can't scope in while they're concussed, which is just another huge buff overall. Do you have any thoughts, Avril or Racket? I'll probably go to Avril first, about any major changes that we should potentially see in the coming weeks. Obviously, no leaks of strats here, but
You're talking
do you
about
think
meta?
that there are some like agents that teams would be dumb to not pick up?
Dumb to not pick up. The dumb to not pick up basket would probably be Breach. I'm pretty sure every team will be looking at Breach now. And dumb to keep going with might be Sage, although like I don't know, there could still be value to be fair, but everything she does is just kind of lackluster now. And Viper could be interesting. Some of the tournaments I've casted have already included a little bit of Viper, so I will be interested to see if that continues, and if teams really want to go in that kind of direction. There still needs to be a lot of learning and some experimentation required for that to really be a thing. And Killjoy I've seen a little bit more of as well, but we'll see how that goes.
What do you think, Racket?
I'll only say something little. As a person who played Breach from the very first day in beta, I mean, I love Breach as a character, and having an additional flashbang means that he has like so much more outplay potential. Like in case if you're going towards a site, here you have 3 loaded up, which means you have an additional one potentially for like a post-plant scenario, for example, like a simple scenario like that, which just adds a whole bunch more depth. And with the buffs to his concussion, hopefully that ruins some of Jet players' lives. So that's my wish, mate.
And that's how Riot would have liked to have seen Breach be played. But then in reality, what actually happens is there's just 6 flashes being exchanged between each other for about 30 seconds, and no one moves. That's the expectation versus reality of Valorant right now.
Have you seen the Scream clip where he's in Ascent B main, and then he just gets hit by the Breach ult, gets hit by like 6 flashes, and then he gets like there's the Brimstone ult hailing down, and then he just dies to a Phoenix Molly that he didn't know existed because he was just like blind for 10 seconds.
Yeah, and then there's like that screenshot next to an Overwatch screenshot, and it's like, show me the difference.
Yeah, it's like the same. It's just the same.
But no, like the Breach standoffs where like it's just this no man's land. It's trench warfare. We're back to World War One, and there's just 2 breaches going at each other, and this big no man's land in the middle that no one crosses into because this infinite breach util from both sides just constantly going off.
Yeah. That's the meta that we can expect. Heard it here first. A lot more Breach and no more Sage. So if that excites you, you should definitely look at tuning into some tournaments later. We'll go through those in a minute. In OCE news, Stubbs and OJ have left Fury. So their roster now listed is Myth, Nova, Pure. I don't know how to pronounce that. And Mundy. And I think they're missing a 5th for now. So they brought on a couple of new players, or a new player a couple of weeks ago, and I guess now they're looking for a 5th ahead of the last chance qualifier for ROV.
Yeah, so Fury will be picking up Twiz, and one of Stubbs and OJ will be going to Pants Down. Coin flip for whoever you like for that one.
All right, heard it here first. We are breaking news here at Run It Back. Obviously,
Pants Down and Fury
Avril
just
has
did
all
a
of
swap.
the insider knowledge and leaks to be able
like,
to confirm that with 100% certainty.
Twiz with a new job for both OJ and Stubbs.
Okay.
Is how it went down between Pants Down and Fury in a back alley.
Interesting trade.
Crash is
bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it pays off for them. That's how it kind of feels. How do you feel about the trade racket?
Yeah, I mean, it shows that Fury are looking to sort of breach that higher gap within the scene. Fury have had some close matches, and they're not quite there yet in terms of like that upper echelon within the scene, and they're just shuffling through, I suppose, and hoping that something sticks. I know they still have the main caller within the team, which was Myth, still on the roster as well, so that's instrumental to how their stuff goes, and hopefully with a few mix and matches, the shuffle, things go better in their favor.
Yeah, I think they're missing out on top 16 as a whole, and getting through last chance qualifier probably would have stung a bit, and that's why they've brought on the changes. At least from the outside looking in, that's kind of what it looks like. And I guess we'll only really see how that pays off for them once the last chance qualifiers actually start for Rise of Valor, which will be in the coming weeks. Looking internationally, Steel has joined 100 Thieves as their third member for the squad. Hiko and Nitro are the other two members in that team. Steel retired from CSGO last week to become a full-time content creator, which lasted about 4 days before he became a
content creator. Player.
Yeah, content
That's
creator.
The code word. That's what they say. That's what they say when as they're transferring to a new team, but they can't announce it. I'm a content creator, and part of the content I'm creating is this tweet announcing that I'm a content creator. That's content.
That's content, bro.
It works.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a 50-50 coin flip between 100 Thieves and T1, I'm pretty sure. That was the two rumors going around in the community.
It was that until 100 Thieves dropped a lot more coins into that coin flip scenario. I like a lot more coins.
It's that COD money, bro. It's that T-shirt money. It's the apparel brand trying to branch into esports.
T1 had the best tweet afterwards that was like, 100 Thieves, like, can you leave some IGLs for the rest of us? Because right now, 100 Thieves have like three like key IGLs in their team. Like between all three of their current players, that's like 3 good CS IGLs right there. And T1 are like, come on, can we have one?
Yeah. I guess now T1's not T1. 100 Thieves are going to announce DAPS as their 4th member. And I'm trying to think of another NA IGL off the top of my head. Yes.
You just want all the cooks in the same kitchen. That could be an issue as well.
That can work.
Yeah, I'd love to listen to the comments for that.
I think 100 Thieves are going to be a really, really exciting squad, though. It's a shame that they couldn't show their true colors in the Ignition Series events, but I feel like come whatever the next series is or whatever the next major tournaments are, they are building a freaking strong roster. Like, I feel like that's the big crux to take out of this.
I'll wait to see how Steel and Nitro perform. I'm sure they'll do well, especially Steel. I think Nitro's had more recent success. I think Steel he's got more to show in Valorant before I think I can be really convinced, at least in my opinion. And the other thing is, like, I think Hiko's been good, but Hiko's not maybe it's not his like position or his style anyway, but he's not quite on that kind of individual talent level like some of the current top teams. Like you do look at Sentinels, you look at TSM, even some of the other teams on that list as well. I think Hiko's like a very good player, but like there's nothing on that roster really excites me right now except maybe potential of Nitro. And I think both Steel and Hiko, especially Steel, coming through with a lot maybe less recent success, might have a bit more to prove.
I'm going to branch out to you, Racket, for this one. We've seen Crashies and Food leave T1, which I think is rather funny, at least from my perspective, because they were the two people who leaked the DMs about Scar on stream. But that happened. Crashies and Food both left T1, which then poses the question with T1: are they going to dip into their acad to rebuild the team? Are they going to try and poach from other teams? How do you see this one playing out, Racket?
It is a really awkward situation, right? And I suppose you do have an academy team there for a reason. So you do have the option to dip in, but I think, T1 are a really big org, and they definitely do have the potential to look at a variety of different teams and try to snag a few players. But, I mean, yeah, it is such like an awkward situation, but, the angel in me wants me to dip into the academy for them to see new players come into the scene, but I have a feeling you're going to be seeing more established names perhaps come into the T1 roster if anyone does put their hand up, just because, T1 actually had a pretty good start to the scene as well, right?
Yeah.
They came in pretty hot. So they're definitely trying to refuel that flame.
And I think that's about it for all we have around the globe in Valorant news. I'm going to quickly rip around what you can find out in the week ahead back here in OS. And we're going to take a quick trip to Japan first. So not actually Oceania. We've got the Ash Winter Extreme Masters Japan qualifier every night from 8 p.m. AEST. You can catch the top Japanese Valorant teams in action over there. And qualifying for the major Asian event with $50,000 on the line. So lots of high quality Valorant happening over there. Also happening in Japan is the Milton Masters, Thursday from 8 p.m. AEST. The game of the week, at least for me, is Jupiter versus Sengoku at 11 p.m. AEST. So if you want to watch some very top quality Valorant, including the, I think, 3-time winners or multiple, just the winners of everything, Absolute Jupiter up against Sengoku, one of the biggest orgs in Japanese esports, that'll be one you'll want to keep your eyes on. Back here in OS, though, we've got the Summoner Society's Weekly, casted by Racket himself, Saturday at 6:30 p.m. AEST. He can correct me on that because I didn't double check before I started, but I'm presuming that it's the same time this week. We've also got the Valorant OS 10-mans at Saturday at 7 p.m. AEST if you want a more casual, fun play sesh between some of the people in this region. And that's all we've got for the week ahead. Racket, was I right with that time?
I believe so. I think they now do them fortnightly, maybe. But yeah, I'll definitely confirm that. I don't think it's this week. Last week they already had their shot, but the next week, I believe. Yeah.
Well, just keep an eye.
Yes.
There'll be something on Twitter. Some Sock Os is their Twitter handle.
Indeed.
Anyways, that is it for Run It Back this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you gentlemen have anything to say to finish off the show, please say it right now. And that's about it. I think that,
cool.
that silence is deafening. And they're just going to smile at me. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next week.
Feels like it's fate. You say I'm the wrong guy. Set live and stand by. Well, I don't know, babe. All right now, I think I can move on. I wanna want you back. Happiness is what I like. I'm trying to get my life on track.